Welcome, everybody. My name is Jackie Majerus, and I am a co-founder of Youth Journalism International, along with my husband, Steve. And we are so delighted to bring one of our incredible alums here to speak with you. We are so impressed by her and so proud of her. And her name is Arooj Khalid, and she is from Lahore, Pakistan. She is 25 years old now. She joined YJI about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. I think she was 14. And she did some pretty incredible work. She can tell you about her interest in journalism and where all of that came from. But I can tell you as someone who was working with her as a 14, 15-year-old girl, I'm pretty sure she was 14 when she wrote a story. And I didn't assign this story to her. She found the story and suggested it. And all I did was sort of help keep her on track. She wrote about a 12-year-old Pakistani girl who was working as a maid instead of going to school. And that was a distressing story, but really well done. And she ended up winning a big award for that story. And she just kept on going. She wrote about political things. She wrote about cultural things. She wrote about a Muslim superhero TV show. She wrote about movie reviews and dengue fever and terrorism and attacks on schools. And she did all kinds of things. And after she stopped being an active student, and after she managed to bring more girls in from Pakistan into YJI, she attended college, and as a college exchange student was able to come visit us for a weekend. We made the most of that. As I said earlier to some of the people who were here, she spoke at another alumni's classroom, an English teacher in the Boston area. She addressed his classroom. She met lots of people here. And then she went back to Pakistan, and she's been working as an educator, and I will let her tell you about that because I don't want to get it wrong. But most recently, we saw her in Istanbul, where she was kind enough to carve out some time and come and be one of the young leaders at our global conference. She pulled out the same charm that she had done on us as a 14-year-old. She had it was mostly girls at the conference. She had them all eating out of her hand. They all looked up to her. They saw her as a role model and someone to emulate, and also kind of like a big sister. And some of them are on this call, and I think that they would attest to how much everyone loved Arooj. And they had not met her before. They didn't know her. She didn't know them, but she went to work very quickly, and she made the conference so much better. She talked to them all about life in Pakistan and growing up as a girl there and girls' education. And as you can imagine, a room full of girls, this was pretty important to them. So anyway, without further ado, I would like to ask you, Arooj, to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are and your perspective and growing up in Pakistan. And I will try to keep my comments and questions to a minimum.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here. So as Jackie has mentioned, I'm Arooj Khalid. I'm from Pakistan, and I've been a YJI student for, I think, more than 10 years at this point. So currently, I also work as a senior associate process and program design for a really big NGO in Pakistan. They're called the Citizens Foundation, and what I do is basically I design educational programs for their students. I have been working in the education sector in Pakistan for the past 5 years. I started working when I was back in college. It was something that was always very close to my heart. Just as Jackie mentioned, even when I was 14, it was a very big deal for me to meet that girl who worked as a maid instead of going to school. And growing up in Pakistan, I've always been very grateful for the fact that I grew up in a very privileged environment. So I did not have to face a lot of the barriers that a lot of women do have to face. But at the same time, there were a lot of challenges that I still had to face. And so that made me very cognizant of the fact that how many barriers everyone else has to face. And so that was something that was always very close to my heart. And I kept thinking about it and I kept wanting to do something. I always thought that I need to, if there are so many people who are facing these challenges, I need to do everything that I can, even if it's not, even if it doesn't change the entire world, it has to change at least some of it. When I went to college, I started my major in sociology, and I wanted to really understand society and find out the reason is for all these problems and challenges that people face. And throughout that journey, in the middle of my degree, I got a scholarship from the US Department of State. So I was able to come to the US for 1 semester and study at Michigan State University. And that's when I volunteered a lot at the schools and libraries. And then I also went to see Jackie and in the YJI HQ, and then also in Boston, I went to different schools and everything, and I saw how education is imparted in the US, and it really inspired me how inclusive it was. Of course, it has its own issues as well, but compared to what was going on in the public schools of Pakistan, it really felt like something really big was being taken away from every single child who was studying in Pakistan. So I came back and I decided that this is what I want to do. And then from then on, I kept on working in the education sector. In the past few years, I have been working with an organization that promotes science education in Pakistan. And I've also gone through the Acumen Fellowship. And I've also been working with Malala Fund to amplify young voices, young girls' voices. And just throughout this journey, I feel like it's been a journey of realizing how important it is to find those voices among the young people and make sure that those voices are heard.
Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in Pakistan?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I was the youngest daughter and I was the only daughter. So I had 2 older brothers. And I realized very early that the society's expectations from my brothers were very different from its expectations from me. Whenever I tried to do things that my brothers were doing, they were good, but they were not what was expected of me. I had a very set path in front of me that, I have to get an education, I have to complete my education, get married, and like make a home and everything, which is not a bad path, but I just didn't identify with that at that age. So as I was growing up, I really had to fight for my way and like my path, that what I want to do and what I don't want to do. I also had a huge lack of role models when I was younger. So that's also something that I try to do, to provide people as many role models as they can for all the different things that they want to do.
So how did you get interested in journalism and how did you end up getting involved with YJI?
Okay, so that's actually a very funny story. When I was very young, like 12 or 13 years old, I got this idea in my head that I wanted to be the editor of this magazine. So there was only one magazine that for young people at that time in my hometown, and it came as part of a newspaper. It was an English newspaper, and it was called Young World. So all the articles in those, I used to read them. I used to love them so much. I used to write letters to that magazine. So I decided that I'm going to be the editor of this magazine one day, and that's how I decided that okay, what do you have to be an editor? You have to be a journalist. You have to write articles and all of that. So I just Googled, how to be a journalist, or like who's going to to teach me how to be a journalist. And then the YJI website came up, and I was very intimidated. I was like, why would an organization based in the US who doesn't know me, who like don't know who I am, and I'm just 14 years old at this point, like why would they want to help me? And there was nothing that I could offer. Like I was afraid there might be like a fee or something, so I could not pay that at that time. So I just emailed them, and I was like, please, I really want to be a part of your organization. I really want to write articles. All I had was just a lot of passion to offer. And to my surprise, I got pretty soon I got a response. And I think it was Jackie who asked me to write something about my hometown. And then I wrote an essay about Lahore, which is the city that I live in. And I just looked it over like 100 times before sending it. And then I sent it, and they were like, okay, this was great. You're part of YJI now. And then they started teaching the thing around me.
You cut out for just a little bit at the end, and you said, oh, good, my internet connection is unstable. Thanks, Maine. Hopefully everyone else was able to hear all of your comments, and it was just the main connection. So what was it like to be part of YJI from Pakistan, and what was it like to get your work published as a teenager?
So in the beginning, it was very skeptical, because people were like, the same thing that I was thinking. Why would someone from another country do this for someone? It was something so alien at that time, and especially because I was 14, so I didn't know like what am I doing. But then so one of the things was that I didn't have to pay anything. There was no fees. In fact, if there was a contest or something, YJI would help me out in that, in sending my entries and everything. And they would, like, Jackie and Steve would always be there to talk over email, over chat. So like they were always there to answer all my questions. And then slowly, when my articles started getting published, it was well, to me, it felt amazing, because I was like, really? I remember Jackie used to tell me that, like we would be talking about something else completely randomly. And then Jackie would say, you should write about this. And I would be like, really? People really want to read this? And it was a journey of realizing that that more than people want to listen to what I have to say, I need people to listen to what I have to say, and my opinions and what I think should or should not be happening to my world is very important, and it needs to be heard by people all over the world. So I think that was very important for me growing up.
So now, I want to now you're part of this book, Dare to Learn, The Power of an Educated Girl, a book from the Malala Fund, 25 autobiographies of young women from around the world. Only 2 from Pakistan, only 25 in the whole world, and you're one of them. What was that like? How did you get selected for this? We're so proud of you. And tell us about this. Tell us about the book. And this is not easy. It wasn't easy to get, because it was from an Indian publisher, and we had to order it special. But it may be more accessible now. Do you know if it's easier for people to get?
I think it's available on Amazon, but I have heard that some people have had trouble ordering it still. So I'm not completely sure.
Well, tell us about that book, and how did you get involved in it? How did you get chosen for that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So this was back in 2021, in the beginning of 2021. I was working at Science Fuse, which is the organization that promotes science education, especially for girls in Pakistan. So some of their programs were funded by Malala Fund. Malala Fund would work directly with Science Fuse on a lot of projects. And then Malala Fund was starting this new fellowship, which is called the Girl Activist Program, where they wanted the organizations that they worked with to recommend people who would like to be part of that fellowship. So I applied for that fellowship, and they had asked me to fill out an application form and make a video and everything. So I did that, and they responded to the application. So the application process was a little bit further away, but they were like, before that, we saw your application and we think you'd be great for this book, this other thing that we're doing. So would you like to write a chapter in it? And I was like, yes, of course. So the reason for that was all the work that I had done with girls. So when I was in university, I used to volunteer a lot, but a lot of the places that we would volunteer, we felt we did not always feel right about how they would work. For example, there was this one orphanage that I used to go to. It was a girls' homeless shelter. And we just didn't like the way, it was me and my friends, and we didn't like the way the staff would treat the girls and how they would, whole day was structured and everything. So we decided that if no one else is going to do what they're supposed to do, we'll do it ourselves. So we created a welfare community, and we started going to that orphanage and asking them to change things. And then we went to a bunch of other schools around Lahore, and we started doing these sort of things. And then after that, when I graduated, I started working at Science Fuse, which also has a lot of their programs catered towards girls. And then with Malala Fund, I would do a lot more programs. And so yeah, that's how I got into the book. But then after the book, I also got selected for that fellowship. And it was a 1.5-year long fellowship. It just ended in November, but its last component was to do a project in Pakistan, which is funded by Malala Fund, and that's what I'm doing these days, which is on climate education.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, so that project, also when I was growing up, so I feel like I have a lot of things that I'm interested in. So when I was growing up, my father used to work in the fruit business, and I would hear all the time about farmers having trouble in their businesses and not having as much yield for their crops as they used to have. And it was because, oh, the weather is changing. Oh, it's too hot this year. It's too cold this year. But I never really realized that all of that happening was because of climate change. That just because in Pakistan, there's almost next to no climate education. And even climate change is sometimes thought of as something, oh, we're doing bad things, so like God is punishing us and we cannot do anything about this. We just have to suffer it. But that's not true. So climate change was always something that I didn't know a lot about. But then when I went to university, I took some courses and I researched more into that. And I realized that this is actually happening all around the world and how much it's affecting. And Pakistan is also an agricultural country. So about like more than 50% of everyone in Pakistan relies on agriculture, but more than, I think around 50% of the workforce is employed in agriculture. So with climate change, the whole country is in a lot of trouble. And also we're one of the countries that has to face the worst effects of climate change. So keeping all that in mind, when I was working at Science Fuse, I tried to add as many themes of climate change in my work in the education sector as I could. And to my surprise, the girls that we used to work with, they were very responsive. A lot of them were also from areas in Pakistan that were badly affected because of climate change. So they were the ones who were firsthand experiencing the effects, like floods and everything. So they were really passionate about it, and they started doing programs on their own in their own city, and that really inspired me. So then I researched more, I learned more about it, and then I did some work with Malala Fund. They trained me on some climate climate change, and then we used to be part of these groups who would suggest what policy changes we want to see in our country. There were opportunities to talk to government representatives, and then also make these policy drafts that would go in the UN. In the UN conferences like COP26 and 27. So all of that, and then now I've started doing that in locally as well. So I go to schools or I go to festivals and other organizations, and I try to advocate for climate education. I try to tell people that this is something that we really need in our schools, and we need our girls and boys to be aware of what climate change is, why it's important, and what they can do. We need them to build resilience and, you know, raise their voices about what changes they want to see in their community.
That is so impressive. You just keep making me so proud of you, Arooj. I'm so glad that you were part of our conference in Istanbul in June. And when you came to the conference, you didn't really know the students, but they were so inspired by you and they were looking up to you. What was it like to work with them? I know there's a couple of them on this call, so you can't be too mean, but I think having you as part of that conference was one of the best things we did. So what was it like? But what was it like for you?
So just getting that opportunity to be able to attend that conference and come there and be with, again, the YJI family and meet new students, that was more than enough, more than I could have ever imagined that I would be able to do. So that was amazing for me. And then when we got there, I met all the students and they were so amazing. I was very surprised that all of the students, by chance, were most of them were girls. And just as I started to get to know them over those 2 weeks, like the things that they talk about, the things that they think about, the things that inspire them, that was so fascinating to me. And I was so like my heart was full because they were teenagers. I could look back like 10 years ago in my life when I was a teenager, and I did not have a lot of people around me. Even right now, like I've started bumping into people who are more like me. But I think 2-3 years ago, it was very hard to find someone who was so passionate about doing something good in the world. And when I started working after graduation, people would continuously ask me, why are you doing what you're doing? Your talents are being wasted. You could earn so much money. So in the development sector in Pakistan, the money you get as payment or as salaries is not that high. So if you work in the development sector, you're not going to earn a lot of money, but you're doing something for the good of the world. So a lot of people used to say, you're crazy. And I used to get very annoyed because they don't understand the passion that I have in my heart. But then when I went to Turkey, there were all these very young girls who understood that, and I never expected that people who were so much way younger than me, I would find that community and that understanding among them, and they were already so passionate and they had so much knowledge about all the things that are happening in the world. That might be because I was a millennial and maybe I was not as connected as they were at their age, but it still impressed me a great deal. And it just sort of confirmed to me that, young people, we need to hear what they have to say, and they're the ones who are going to be living in the world for way longer than we are. So their voices are very important and they need to be heard by everyone.
So you mentioned that you're not exactly raking in a lot of money being in the development world in Pakistan. Can you talk about money? What does it mean to young people that YJI doesn't charge them fees to be part of the program, to be in the YJI group? How important do you think that is? What's the value of that for girls in Pakistan or other countries where a fee might keep them? I mean, would it have kept you from being part of YJI? Would you would you have been able to do it if there was a fee?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like I mentioned, that was one of my first concerns as a 14-year-old, because where is a 14-year-old going to get any money, much less considering all the disparity between all the countries. So that was a huge thing for me. And I mean, I don't think I ever could have been gone through all of these amazing experiences if there was a fee or something. And I think that's something that's really amazing, because there are very few opportunities for young people that you don't have to spend a lot of work in. And it's not just it's not just that YJI does not ask for any fee or money. It's also that that everyone at YJI is so well connected, and it's like it's something that's all over the world. So like 10 years, or I mean, many years before the pandemic, we were already online. Everything happened online. You didn't have to. So as a 14-year-old girl, it would have been a huge problem for me to even go somewhere outside my house. But I didn't have to do that because I had a computer, and that's all that mattered. And I was so easily able to do that. And everyone was so compassionate and compensating for all the barriers that I faced over the years. And I think that just kept inspiring me more, that, you know, okay, there are people who believe in you and you can do this.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there's anything that we should have asked you, that I should have asked you about, that you would like to talk about before we see if there are questions from the people who are here on this call with us.
Well, not really. I think we've spoken about everything. It wasn't just me that was part of YJI ever since I joined. In a way, slowly, like my whole family came around, and then they would all encourage me, because I would send my published articles to everyone. But then I remember especially my dad used to say that you are writing this will come in handy, and these people you have to go. When I was going to the US, it was his special advice to go and meet Jackie, whatever it takes. I have to go and meet them and tell them to come visit us in Pakistan as well. So I think it just inspired everyone, and it made everyone believe that if I could do all of this, and if I had the support of people in the world who believed in me, I could do a lot more as well. And even I think it's very important to understand that when you're young. Even right now, when I go to organizations to conduct workshops, and especially back then when I was like a teenager, people would be so surprised by my age. They would communicate with me very normally over the internet, but as soon as I met them, they would be like, "Oh, you're so young. We didn't know that you were a teenager." And then I would be like, "Yes, I'm a teenager." And so it's all the more. It just made me realize over the years that it's all the more important that we consider that young people's opinions and what they have to say have a lot of value, and they need to be incorporated in everything that we do in the world. And we can't just keep telling them that, "Oh, you're so young. We didn't expect that." But we should expect that. We should include young people in everything.
We definitely should. We have first question is coming from Richard. I'm going to add him to the spotlight. And Richard, I think you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Arooj. I'm so impressed with you. I think that your story is an incredible story. And I have a question. I'm a musician, and I'm a retired teacher. So I'm interested about the arts. Oh, sorry, my dog is interrupting. Can you tell me anything about young women and the creative arts, music, visual art, theater? Are there restrictions on that in Pakistan due to religious views? I just think it's so important for artistic expression to flourish in any society. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. And that's such an important one. So there are definitely restrictions for women when it comes to music and arts and any of those expressions in Pakistan. But I would not say that they're religious. They're more of a cultural nature. And it's just the assumptions that come with it, that if you are in one of those fields, then there's just a bunch of other assumptions that you must be that also. But that's not true. And there is a very up and rising art scene and music scene as well. Girls are doing it more and more, and it's starting to become less like something that's really far away that you can't even think of. More and more girls are experimenting with it and wanting to go into it. So I think that's great, but I feel like we're still very far away from where we should be, like very, very far away.
Thank you. I'm sure that some of the other people have some questions. Oh, Ipek, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, I was hello, Arooj. I was going to ask if nobody else is asking. Okay. Hello, Arooj. I missed you so much, by the way. So I was going to ask you, like, you talked about support, and I just wanted to know, did you have like friends your age that supported you with your ideas, or if you had any like friends or people around you that you could share your ideas and your work with them to, share with them and make yourself feel better and stuff like that, because so people need sharing that stuff. And I just wondered if you had anyone around you for that, and if you didn't, what did you do?
Thank you. That's such an important question too, IPEC. And also, I miss you. Okay, so and like I said, there were not a lot of people who shared the same interests as me. I was a very introvert. They really focused on achieving high marks. And so most of my friends were really busy doing that. And I was like, maybe I don't need like 99%. Maybe I'm okay with like 85, 90%. But then I wanted to do more stuff like YJI and other things that I used to do. But there were people definitely who I could share my ideas with and who would support me. One of them were my brothers and my parents. They would always be there for me, and they would be like, okay. And especially my brothers, they would encourage me to go and try and have new experiences. And if anything there's that I wanted to do, they would always check it out and be like, okay, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. So they were always there to guide me, which I'm very grateful for. But also then there was, I found people somehow, like through, I remember there was I don't know if it's still there, but Tumblr used to be a very popular website at that time. And there were a lot of people who had these discussion boards where people of similar interests, but of course you had to practice like a lot of safety precautions because you were online and you were a teenager. But then also there was the YJI family. I remember I've always been very close with Jackie, and I used to discuss everything. So it wasn't just journalism and the pieces that we were working on. So that also meant a lot to me. And a lot of YJI students who were also working with me, even though I had never met them, we would still like chat online and talk to each other. So I think more or less I found people.
Before we go on to Nikki's question, Ipek, you were there, and you didn't really know any of us when we arrived in your city for the conference, and you definitely didn't know Arooj. So what was the impact that she had, if any, on you, and what was that like for you to meet her and be part of all of that?
Well, Arooj was actually came first you and Beth came next to us, in the cafe. I don't know if you remember, but like my first impression was like, wow, what a beautiful and amazing person. And then after I get to know you personally, and when we talked and discussed about some things and about our ideals and our efforts and hopes for the future, I felt an immense connection with you in that part, because I also want to change some things in the world. I also want to improve some things in the world. And seeing that somebody actually got to start from somewhere and actually made impact, significant impact. I don't think any of the things you do are insignificant. You are doing very important things for our world, I think. And seeing that gave me courage that maybe I can also start somewhere. And I just have the energy and courage to do that now, thanks to you. So thank you for that. I am so glad I met you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. And of course you can, and you will. I'll wait for it.
And Arooj, you haven't met Nikki in person, but she is our student in Brazil, and she's also amazing. So Nikki, and she made a point of saying nothing would keep her from coming to this meeting today. So Nikki, it's all for you now. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hello, Rudy. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having this opportunity to meet with you. Finally, Jackie's just mentioned so much that I feel like I've met with you so long, so much time, and it's so good to be with you here and listening your inspiring story. I would like to know that for you, after all this experience you had in your life and all this growing up process you had, and especially in your career, do you think that now women, they are being more taken seriously by the Pakistan community?
Thank you so much for your question. So I think if I compare it to like the previous generation, or even like 10-15 years ago, I think there's definitely a lot of improvement. And I was just talking about this to a friend the other day. They were doing this program where they invited all the vice chancellors and these really big people from universities. But what I noticed was everyone sitting on that stage they were all men. So there were no women. And then I thought about it, and there are very few women vice chancellors of universities, even though that's just one very specific thing. But in posts that are so, like, I was just thinking about how hard it must have been for the generation before me, how many challenges they must have had to fight. And it's not that, like, I still have to fight and I still have to go through a lot of barriers, but it's easier for me than it was for them. And I when I think about it, where my mind goes to is that I have to make it a lot easier. It should be a lot easier for my for the generation that comes after me. So whether those are teenagers, you guys, or I have a niece, I always think of her. She's 10 years old. So I always think that it's not like the world is going to change overnight. I don't think that, we're going to achieve gender equality or anything in my lifetime. So my goal is to make sure that at least my niece or the people in the next generation don't have to face all the barriers that I faced. They will still have to face some barriers, but they should be less than the ones that I had to. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki. And before I hand it over to Chu Ying, I just want to say, if anybody has a question and they don't want to be spotlighted, you can put it in the chat. So don't let that keep you from asking the questions that you want to ask. I just kind of want to showcase our students a little bit while they're here. It's because I think they're all pretty great. Anyway, go ahead, Chu Ying. Ask what you've got to ask.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here, and you're such an inspiration. Like, you really give me so much hope for the future, because I can really relate to what you said about not really like many people around me wanting to pursue a life of social impact, and that's definitely some sort of field I want to go into. And you've really talked about some of your past projects, and they're really cool and incredible. But I wanted to know, what are some of your current projects and initiatives you're working on, and some of your future ambitions?
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really fun question for me to answer. So currently, I'm working at the Citizens Foundation, which is a nonprofit in Pakistan. So their goal is to provide very high quality, good level education to the underprivileged communities in Pakistan or the remote communities. So I'm designing a few programs for them. Right now, I'm working on the digital literacy program. So so these students, they don't have a lot of digital devices. At most, they will have one smartphone, which is used by the entire household. So that's a huge challenge when designing a digital literacy program, because how do you teach them digital literacy without a digital device? So we had to ask the schools to like, they have computer labs, to allow the students to use them and stuff like that. After this, I'm going to design a few programs that provide them pathways. So these students are after the 10th grade, they leave their schools, and then a lot of them are from underprivileged families, so they want something, they want financial stability. So so the program is going to be about how you can use technology for earning, and how you can become financially stable along with your studies, and you don't. Doing the project with Malala Fund, which is about climate advocacy and education. So in that program, it's a 2-month program, and we're going to go to different schools. And the school will give us 10 students, so most of them are going to be girls, and we're going to teach them about climate change, what it is, why it happens, help them recognize its effects in their daily life, and help them develop their messages, and what they think about it, what do they want to do about it. And then at the end, the students will do a community activity, which is up to them. It's going to be their initiative, what they think that their community needs. So those are just some of the things.
That's amazing. I would love to meet you one day in the future.
Hopefully.
Okay, so Mackenzie, who is our student out in Oregon and an up and coming terrific reporter, cannot be on camera this morning, but is asking, how much access did you have to technology as you were growing up in Pakistan?
So very interesting question. I think I had pretty much uninterrupted access to technology as I was growing up, especially the internet. I think I always had a computer that I could use. And then I think when I was like 16 or 17, I also got my own mobile phone. But that's not true for a lot of people in Pakistan. This is because I was lucky to be born in a privileged family, so I had access to technology. But for a lot of Pakistan, the access has improved a little bit due to the pandemic, because people had to use technology, but it's still very far away. I think about 30% of the people in Pakistan, they don't live in places that have internet connectivity at all. So it's not even about having devices, they just don't have internet at all. But there are people and organizations in the development sector working on that and trying to make sure that people have more and more access to the internet.
I'm sure that there are some more questions out there. I don't see them in the chat, though. I don't see any hands raised, but I know that we have some students here, alums, so maybe, and I think Saritha is joining us. That's so nice. Okay. So while we're waiting for people to cogitate and come up with some more questions, I'm sure there are some. We have a bunch of journalists in here. And we have a lot of people on this call who have been really generous to YJI, and I really want to thank for that. And I hope that you're feeling very good about what you're supporting, because I believe that Arooj is an incredibly fine example of our students and what, you know, how they grow up and what kind of wonderful people they become. But she's not, I mean, she's not the only one who's great. She is really great, but our students are amazing. And some of them are just getting started, like some of the ones you've heard from here on this call, but they're an exceptional group of young people. And I think Arooj would agree that the people that she's met are pretty great. So do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like to visit that American high school in Massachusetts when you talked to Zach's class, your fellow alum, and Zach was teaching English outside of Boston, and you came and talked to his class and saw all those lockers?
Yeah, so that was so all my life when I was growing up, I had been very familiar with American culture. I had seen all the American movies, all the American TV shows. That's all I did, basically, sitting on my computer. I just used to watch American movies, American TV shows, everything. So when I went to the US, and it was so I was very grateful and very lucky to have that opportunity. It was a scholarship that is offered every year in Pakistan, I think twice a year in Pakistan, to university students. And so it was the first time I ever traveled outside Pakistan. And people always tell you that, you know, the things in movies and TV shows, they're a little hyped up, they're a little exaggerated. It's not going to be like that. But when I went to the US, it was exactly like that. And I was just, my jaw was on the ground. And I was like, people are wrong. It's exactly like that. So when I went to that high school, I saw all the lockers, and just immediately all the high school movies that I had ever seen just came rushing back to me. So that was a very fun experience for me, because in our schools, so we all the schools in Pakistan, they have uniforms. We don't have lockers. We just carry our bags from home to school and school to home. And it's just a very different environment in a Pakistani school. And when I entered the American high school, I was like, oh my God, it was very interesting.
That was something I'll never forget. You just, your mind was blown by the lockers, and I think you said you felt like you were on a movie set. It was really funny to me as someone who sees lockers as pretty commonplace. But next question comes from our student in Dhaka, Bangladesh. That's from Usrat, and her question is, what would your advice be to someone who's interested in working in the development sector in the future?
That's a very tough question because so working in the development sector comes, I think my number one advice would be to brace for a lot of heartbreak, because when you're working in the development sector, you meet a lot of people, and usually when you start out, you're very passionate because you chose this sector, you have the passion to do good in the world, but then you meet more and more people and more organizations that are saying that they're doing the work, but they're not really. So it's you have to really find your way through to people who really mean it, who are really passionate about the world, about the work that they do. But you do find those people. They are everywhere. You will find them. So don't worry, but just be ready for that. And you cannot be discouraged or disappointed by the other people who are just there to, you know, just say things and be popular and stuff like that. You just have to keep going, and you have to know in your heart that you're doing the right thing, and you're on the right path, you know the right people, so you're going to, what the work that you're doing is creating impact, and you have to just focus on the impact and not on all the troublemakers around you. You have to not listen to them, or listen to them from one year and then take it out the other year.
That's pretty good advice. And your pal Owen from Scotland, your fellow Istanbul group leader, is asking, what would be your one piece of advice to young, new journalists just starting out?
I think it would sort of be the same, but also okay, it's a little different from what you asked, but I also want to say this, that not just to the journalists, but everyone. We usually think, I believe that all the people here on this call understand how important journalism is, but usually people think that, you know, journalism is not that important, and why would you want to learn journalism if you're not going to be a journalist? But I have found that to be very, very false. I think I was very lucky to have journalism as one of the first things I learned, because when you're learning journalism, first of all, it taught me to believe in myself. It taught me to have that conviction that everyone in the world needs to hear what I have to say, and they have to hear it, and they will. And it also, when you're going through all the different types, so in the beginning as a student, I wrote a lot of different stories. As Jackie mentioned, I wrote movie reviews, I wrote news stories, I wrote features, I wrote all of that stuff, and just figuring out the information from, okay, what information do we have? Which part of it is true? Which part of it is just something that we believe, or we've heard throughout our lives, and we just assume something, getting to the bottom of the truth and finding out what does this really mean, you know, like going to the depth of a topic and just really understanding it from inside out. I think that skill I developed when I was a student, when I was a YJI student, and that one skill I have used every single day in every single work that I've done all my life, no matter it was related to journalism or not. And I think that's something that we all need in this world. No, whether we're doing something or not, that's just something that everyone should have, but not a lot of people get to develop. But I think that's something that you very easily get from journalism.
Thank you. We've got another question from student Jasmine, who lives in a town right outside of Seattle, Washington. And she says that she unfortunately cannot unmute right now. But she has this question. She says, you mentioned that people around you voiced a lot of doubt about your career path, especially concerning money. Can you talk a little bit more about how you dealt with this, and any advice for students in a similar situation?
Yeah, okay. So in the sense that when I graduated, I did not really have a lot of financial responsibility on me. I just had to take care of myself. So the things about my career and the money thing did not bother me that much. The only thing that I learned from that was that, again, you have to figure out between, like, you're going to hear 100 things a day. You have to figure out what things you need to listen to and what things you just don't need to listen to. So I did have this learning curve with money that I need to, it's not like I'm working like 60 hours a week and not getting paid even for half of it, and I continue doing that. You have to ask, and you have to fight, and you have to make sure you get paid for what you deserve. But considering everything else, like a lot of the times, a lot of the organizations that you might work with, they might not have a lot of funds to pay you. And if that's up to you, how you balance your, financials and everything. I've done that a lot. I would make sure that I had not just one stream of income, and I would do like a bunch of projects at a time, which also satisfied that need in me to do a billion things at a time. So it was sort of very helpful for me in that way. But other than that, it's just about following your heart, but making sure that you're not being exploited is what I'm trying to say. Making sure that you're getting what you deserve. but then also not listening to people who are just going to come and, say things to you just for fun. You don't have to listen to them. Just keep following your heart and keep doing the right thing.
That is such good advice. So we have a comment, not a question, from Aisha Karim. She says, I just want to say young girls like Arooj give me immense hope about our future, and I can't wait to see Arooj accomplish great things. Rooting for you.
Thank you.
And I can't see the entire name. Mohammed's last name starts with an H. Says, got the chance to undertake a training provided by Ms. Arooj through her organization for the organization we worked in, with the help of which we empowered students, especially female students, to fall in love with science, and especially inquiry and curiosity through stories, which helped the students to participate and perform well in a citywide STEM Olympiad last year. On the coming Monday morning, the 6th grade student Fatima, that indirectly benefited from Ms. Arooj's training, science exam. She was excited and through this message wanted to thank Ms. Arooj for her efforts in making her fall in love with science.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Anjola, who is one of our students in London, says, Arooj, everything you have shared with us is very inspirational, and it is amazing to see how you think of also setting an example for the younger generations with your work. My question is, how has YJI allowed you to develop your confidence as an introvert, and what lessons from YJI have you learned that have inspired you for the future?
Thank you. So I think one of the first things that I've mentioned before is having that belief in myself that I can do something. If I want something to change, I don't have to just sit and be sad about it or just be upset that this is something that's happening around me. I can do something. I can take action, and that action in, like, when I was 14, I couldn't do much. I couldn't do a lot I was a child, I was a girl, so I couldn't do a lot at that time. But just writing about it and telling the whole world, and then the response that I would receive, that meant so much to me, and that told me that there's really no excuse for not doing something. Like, no matter what situation you're heart is in the right place, you'll find a way. And that, I think that's something that has kept coming. It's not that I just learned that when I was 14. Even when I was 15, 16, 20, 21, 22, and even at 25, I realized that again and again. So like you mentioned, being an introvert. So even as an introvert, I didn't think that anyone wants to hear what I have to say. But YJI made me realize that no, they need to hear it. And if I won't say, like, it's very important for me to say those things and to tell people that they need to hear it. And I think that's something that I've continued doing, and I hope I continue doing in the future as well.
And we have another question from Chu Ying.
Hi, it's nice to talk to you again. But I wanted to ask, with all the projects you're working on, especially when you were a student, how did you balance like a personal life, academics, and then also pursuing all these passions?
I think it was not very hard because these projects, they were like the main focus, like if I had a quiz or an exam tomorrow, I didn't want to study for it like any other student, but I would study for it just so that I would get to do these things. Because like being from a brown family and everything, you have to make sure that you get good marks and your education is your first priority. So I had to make sure that my grades were good in order to do everything else. And that makes sense to me looking back. At that time, maybe not. But so most of my time, and also a huge factor in that was the kind of friends that I made in university. So a lot of them had the same interest. They wanted to do the same things. So let's say we were going to do a project in a school. It was sort of like the same as hanging out with your friends. You're just doing that activity. So I think it was easy to balance that way.
Thank you.
Nikki is saying she really hopes we can have another global conference so that she can finally meet you in person.
Absolutely.
I hope so too. So I don't see any other questions, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm so touched that you all came out to hear from Arooj today, and I'll just put our gallery view on so that you can see there's lots of you here, and it really means a lot. I know it's a busy time, lots of people getting ready for the holidays, and Saturday morning, Saturday night, you've got lots of things to do, and you chose to come here, and I thank you for that. And is there any, if any, and Nikki, you win the prize for the best shirt. Can you just show? Yeah, in Brazil, she's rocking that YJI shirt. Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
it's beautiful.
It looks very good on you. You are the best looking woman in Brazil now. You remember I told you that?
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna write every day.
So, Arooj, is there anything more you'd like to say before we thank everyone and say goodbye? We will try to put a recording of this up. That's my goal. Lots of people asked for a recording, and hopefully we can make that work. But
Yeah.
like being here in the moment. So
Jackie, before we sign off, I just want to tell you I've just been glued to this because it's been so interesting, and thank you so much for speaking. For you, what LaRouche is it?
Arooj.
You are fascinating to listen to. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. That means a lot. Thank you. Lots of people giving you nice messages in the chat, Arooj. So I'll let you sign off if you'd like.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming. That means so much to me.
Did anybody who was with Arooj this summer want to say anything more? Holly, you wrote about her.
Yeah, so I did most of what Arooj said today. I wrote about in the story that I wrote about her. Sorry, I've just seen you spotlighted my video. Let me just put it up. And yeah, she was really inspirational, and we had a beautiful setting for when we spoke to her. Well, when she spoke to us, we were on top of this mountain, and we had the sea in the background, and it was just such a peaceful environment. And then hearing her talk, we were just sat in silence, we were just glued to her and her story. And yeah, as she said herself, a lot of us were young women, and so what she said really resonated with us. And yeah, I really enjoyed hearing her story again today. And yeah, definitely check out her chapter in the book, because yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, and Holly's story is there's a link to it in the chat. Steve put a link to it. And Arooj also wrote something about how the conference impacted her and her decision to, maybe she wants to talk about that for a minute, decision to focus her work on this young age group. I think you had been working with little kids, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I used to work with younger kids, mostly in early childhood education, or up to 10 years old. But then I was already starting to work with a bit older kids, and then meeting everyone at YJI, I was I have to work with this generation and how passionate they are and how amazing they are. I need to support them in every way I can and help them and amplify their voices, just like people did for me. And so that was my motivation. And now the programs that I designed for are for a bit older students who are in their teenagers and young adults. And I also do a lot of advocacy work with them, which just continues to inspire me more and more.
You also got a comment from Jackie from Nigeria, and she says, thank you so much for sharing your story and accomplishments. She's a fellow YJI student. She says, it's so interesting to hear. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you all will go and check out all the pieces from the conference. The conference had an incredible impact on everyone who went to it, including me and Steve and well, everyone did. And there are some really excellent pieces of introspection on the website now, and also some pretty nice travel writing about some of the places we went. And Aliat says, thank you so much, Arooj. She's a YJI student in Virginia. Thank you, Liat. So I think I just want to say thanks to everybody, and yeah, share the work. Steve says, besides donating, which many of the people on this call already do, and we're so grateful, is maybe share this with your friends, tell your friends about it, and if you use social media, share there or pass your newsletter around. If you'd like more info, let me know. Thanks everybody for being here.